My dear friend, what I'm about to tell you isn't just another word of motivation, it's a divine alert. Because right now in this very moment, while the world is chasing noise and confusion, heaven is preparing you for precision. You were not created to stumble through life guessing, you were chosen to move with revelation. The most dangerous player in any game isn't the loudest voice in the room, it's the one who already knows the next move before anyone else even stands to play. That's you. That's who God is shaping you to be. History belongs to those who see beyond the surface, to those who recognize the storm before it hits, who stand still when others scatter, who trust the script even when they can't see the ending. And when they look at you and whisper, "How did you know?" you don't need to explain. Because what they call intuition, you call the Holy Spirit. What they call luck, you call divine preparation. You move differently because your vision comes from heaven. Every step you take exposes deception, confuses the enemy, and fulfills destiny. You don't react to life. You command it, guided by the one who already wrote your victory. Before we dive deeper into this revelation, I just want to pause and say thank you to everyone who's been part of this space, whether through a word of encouragement, a quiet prayer, or simply by listening with an open heart. You are the reason this message keeps burning brighter. Your faith keeps this fire alive. If this message speaks to your spirit, drop 777 inches the comments below. It's more than a number. It's a sign of divine completion and awakening. Let's begin. Beloved chosen ones, first let me tell you something that most people will never understand until life breaks them enough to learn it. Peace is not weakness, calm is not passivity, and stillness is not ignorance. Real power is the ability to stand unshaken when the world expects you to crumble. When everyone else is panicking, screaming, and running in circles, you stand still because you already know how this ends. That's what faith looks like when it matures. That's what spiritual experience feels like when it's been forged in fire. You've been through enough storms to recognize the clouds before they even gather. You've been betrayed enough times to feel the knife long before it's drawn. You've seen enough false promises to know which doors are truly open and which are only painted on walls to waste your time. And so when chaos rises, you don't flinch, you don't rush, you don't let your emotions drag you into reaction. You breathe, you listen, and you move like a soldier who's already read the battle plan. People watch you and whisper, "How did you know?" They think it's magic. They think you're lucky. But it's neither. It's mastery. It's discernment born out of survival. Because when you've walked through fire and survived, you learn to smell smoke before it even starts. When you've lost everything and rebuilt from ashes, you stop fearing the collapse, you start recognizing its signs. That's why your calm unsettles people. It exposes their dependency on chaos. They depend on catching others off guard, on being the loudest voice in the room, on shocking and manipulating. But you've already lived through their kind of storm. You disarm them without saying a word because nothing they do feels new to you. It's a rerun of a show you've already seen, and you know exactly how it ends. See, most people treat life like a guessing game. They wake up every day reacting to whatever falls into their lap. They scramble when things go wrong, freeze when choices appear, and crumble under uncertainty. But not you. You carry yourself differently. You walk as if you've studied the script and you already know your lines. You understand that panic is the enemy of purpose. You understand that confusion is the devil's favorite weapon. So you stop feeding it. You stop letting the noise decide your pace. And here's the truth that few can accept: when you stop reacting to chaos, you become dangerous. Because calm people are not easily manipulated. A calm spirit is unpredictable. The enemy depends on your reaction to gain power, but when you don't react, you rob him of his influence. Your peace becomes your armor. Your stillness becomes your weapon. You're not avoiding the storm. You're mastering it. Now listen, this doesn't mean you don't feel pressure. It means you've learned to channel it. You've learned that pressure reveals what's real. You've learned to see the difference between panic and preparation. When others start shouting, "What now?" you're already 5 steps into what's next. That's the difference between someone guessing and someone guided. The Holy Spirit doesn't scream over the noise. He whispers to those who are still enough to hear him. And I know this personally. I've stood in rooms where everything looked like it was falling apart, and yet something inside me said, "Don't move. Don't panic. The storm is proof that the promise is close." When you walk with God long enough, you begin to realize he doesn't remove chaos. He teaches you how to command peace inside it. That's what makes your presence unsettling. Because when others expect you to break, you don't. When they expect you to fight, you stay still. When they expect you to react, you respond with silence and strategy. And suddenly, everything they built on shocking you begins to crumble. Your calmness becomes prophecy. It speaks before you do. It tells the world, "I already saw this. I already prepared for this. I already won this." People start doubting their own plans around you. They start questioning their confidence. Because when someone doesn't panic, it makes everyone else realize how fragile their certainty is. You've learned that fear is contagious, but so is faith. And the moment you choose peace over panic, you shift the entire atmosphere. You tilt the advantage toward yourself without saying a single word. Let me tell you this, when God gives you vision, he also gives you composure. The devil's greatest weapon is distraction, but he cannot distract a mind that already knows its destination. That's why you walk the way you do. That's why you seem untouched by the noise. You move like you've already seen the ending because your faith lets you glimpse it. You may not know every detail of the path, but you know who wrote it, and that's enough. So while they're still trying to figure out the opening scene, you're already halfway through the story. While they're busy worrying about the problem, you're quietly working on the solution. While they're preparing to surprise you, you're calmly watching, knowing the outcome is already under divine control. That's why your peace is misunderstood. Some think it's arrogance. Some think you're disconnected. But peace doesn't mean you don't care. It means you've already decided what deserves your energy. You've already surrendered what you can't control, and you've already accepted what you must face. That kind of surrender is power, not weakness. So let them talk. Let them whisper. How did you know? You don't owe them an explanation? Because the truth is, you didn't predict it, you prepared for it. And that's the secret. The enemy can't defeat someone who's already rehearsed the ending in faith. You've seen too much, lost too much, learned too much to ever go back to living blind. You've grown eyes that see beyond the surface. So the next time the storm rises, remember this: peace doesn't mean nothing's happening. It means everything is happening exactly as it should under the guidance of the one who goes before you. Walk like you've already seen the ending. Stand like you've already won, because you have. The world will always try to rush you, pressure you, provoke you, but wisdom moves at its own rhythm. Don't let their noise change your tempo. Move with divine timing. Keep your head clear, your heart steady, and your eyes fixed on the promise. Because when you move like someone who's already seen the ending, you don't just survive the story, you redefine it. And those who once doubted you will look back and say, they knew. Somehow they knew. Second chosen ones, do you know, real discernment isn't about sensing a vibe, it's about decoding a motive. You don't just read energy, you decipher intention. You don't move by what people say, you move by what they mean. Because words are easy, smiles are rehearsed, and gestures can be borrowed. But intention always leaks through the cracks. Most people react to what they hear. They take every kind word as truth, every soft tone as care, every compliment as love. But you've lived enough life to know that not every God bless you comes from a pure heart. Sometimes it's camouflage, sometimes it's bait. And so now you've learned to listen deeper to the pauses between sentences, to the tremor in the voice, to the eye that looks too long or too fast. You've learned that people reveal themselves in silence more than speech. You can sense when someone's excitement is tinted with envy, when kindness hides control, when generosity carries a price tag. You've trained your soul to detect the static beneath their frequency. And while they think they're hiding it, you're already reading their code like a map. That's not magic, it's mastery. It's discernment forged in fire. You didn't learn it in comfort, you learned it in heartbreak. Every betrayal tuned your spirit sharper. Every lie became a lesson in translation. You stopped hearing just words, you started hearing truth. See, intention speaks louder than tone. It hums beneath every word like a low drumbeat. Only the aware can hear. You can feel it when someone enters the room. You can tell when the atmosphere shifts, when the air gets heavier, when the smile doesn't reach their eyes. That's your spirit saying something's off. And you've learned to trust that, because the Holy Spirit doesn't always shout. Sometimes he whispers through discomfort. You're not paranoid, you're perceptive. And that perception unnerves people. They don't know how to act when they can't manipulate you. Their flattery falls flat. Their charm bounces off because your discernment strips away their disguise. They can't control you with attention or deceive you with emotion. You've grown beyond performance. You live by revelation. You see, most people depend on reaction to win. They need you to believe them, defend them, or chase their approval. But when you don't react, their power breaks. Your calmness confuses them. Your silence exposes them. When you stop dancing to their rhythm, they lose control of the song. That's why discernment feels lonely. Because you start seeing the truth about people you wanted to believe in. You realize not every friend is for you, not every opportunity is divine, and not every door is meant to be opened. But don't let that make you bitter, let it make you wise. God doesn't give you sight to judge, he gives you sight to survive. He shows you motives not so you can hate people, but so you can navigate them. Discernment is divine protection, wearing the face of discomfort. Sometimes he lets you feel someone's spirit before you know their story, so you'll know when to hold back. You've walked into rooms and felt it. The fake warmth, the hidden agenda, the envy that pretends to applaud you. You've smiled anyway because wisdom taught you to see without reacting. You don't expose the people, you expose the patterns. And once you recognize the pattern, you can predict the outcome. That's how you stay 3 steps ahead. Because discernment doesn't just tell you who's lying, it tells you what's coming. You decline the wrong invitations. You withdraw from the wrong alliances. You stay still while others chase chaos. People call it luck. It's not luck. It's divine insight operating in real time. But understand, this discernment costs something. It costs your ability to pretend. It costs your comfort in crowds. It costs the illusion that everyone means well. Because once you can see intention, you can't unsee it. And that's heavy. Sometimes you'll sense danger in a smile, manipulation in a hug, jealousy in applause. Yet it's that very awareness that keeps you safe. You start to realize that silence is a teacher. The longer you listen, the clearer motives become. You don't rush to respond, you wait, you watch, and the truth eventually walks out on its own. Because lies need words to survive, but truth can stand in stillness. People might label you distant, cold, or difficult to read. Let them. They're not meant to understand peace that's built on perception. When you can sense intention, you don't waste energy proving, arguing, or defending. You simply discern, decide, and detach. And that's where the real power shifts. Because manipulators thrive on confusion, but you operate from clarity. They depend on your blindness. You move by revelation. Their tricks crumble because you already see the strings attached. Their control evaporates because you no longer play the game. When they realize they can't deceive you, they call you intimidating. When they can't distract you, they call you proud. But that's not pride, that's precision. It's the Holy Spirit fine-tuning your sight so you can see through the fog of falsehood. You know what happens next. Freedom? Because discernment frees you from emotional prisons. You stop chasing explanations. You stop needing closure. You stop apologizing for boundaries. When you read intention, you stop walking into traps built with compliments. You stop mistaking attention for affection. This is what maturity feels like. It's quiet, it's clear, it's deliberate. You respond with wisdom instead of reaction. You speak only when the Spirit gives utterance. You step back, not from fear, but from foresight. And every time someone wonders, how did you know, you just smile? Because what they call intuition is revelation. What they see as coincidence is confirmation. You don't move by feelings, you move by discernment. And discernment is God's gift to those who listen deeper than sound. So keep listening. Don't doubt what your spirit tells you just because your eyes can't yet see it. The truth always whispers before it shouts. And when you stay sensitive to those whispers, you'll never be blindsided again. Discernment will save you from counterfeit love, from false prophets, from empty opportunities, from wasted years. It's not suspicion, it's divine awareness. It's walking through life with heaven's radar. So walk with confidence. Speak less. Observe more. Let your silence read the room. Let your peace expose their motive. Because when you can hear the heart behind the words, you'll never be fooled by the performance again. You don't just read energy, you decipher intention. And that, my friend, is the reason your presence commands respect your steps, stay steady, and your life remains covered. My dear friends, third, let me tell you something. The world rarely understands people reveal themselves long before they confess. Their words might hide, but their patterns never lie. What most call intuition is really recognition memory, sharpened into instinct. You've simply lived enough, observed enough, and endured enough to recognize repetition when it walks into the room wearing a new disguise. Human behavior moves in cycles. Pride repeats. Betrayal repeats. Manipulation repeats. It may change faces, but it keeps the same rhythm, the same scent, the same fingerprints. You've watched people move with predictable arrogance, thinking they're playing a new game when they're just replaying an old one. They don't know that you've seen this before. You know what comes after the flattery, after the promise, after the silence? Their patterns have already written the ending in your mind. And that's the power of awareness. You're not guessing, you're remembering. Experience became your teacher, pain became your textbook, and repetition became your revelation. You learned that the world doesn't surprise you twice in the same way. Every wound you survived trained your eyes to see the shape of danger before it takes form. You recognize the tremor in someone's confidence before they betray you. You sense the overcompensation of a liar trying too hard to seem sincere. You feel the temperature drop in a room when deceit enters cloaked in charm. Most people think discernment is mystical. It's not. It's disciplined awareness. It's the spiritual science of pattern. You don't operate off emotion, you operate off observation. You've watched enough to know that what people call random is just unacknowledged routine. They act out the same habits, repeat the same excuses, and play the same games, unaware that you've already memorized the script. That's why you rarely react. You move like someone who already knows the plot. Because when you've seen betrayal enough times, you can predict it. When you've seen greed enough times, you can spot it. And when you've been hurt enough times, you stop mistaking pain for surprise. You simply nod and say, there it is again. Your calmness confuses people. They think you're cold. But what they call indifference is really foresight. You're not detached, you're prepared. Because you've realized that patterns are promises. The same seeds produce the same harvest. The same behavior always leads to the same outcome. And once you understand that, you stop hoping someone will change, you start believing what they show you. You've learned that peace doesn't come from ignorance. It comes from pattern recognition. You don't get caught in emotional storms because you read the weather long before it rains. You know when someone's apology is a performance, when their kindness is calculated, when their loyalty is temporary. You see the cycle forming, and instead of trying to stop it, you step aside. You no longer beg for better behavior, you simply distance yourself from predictable chaos. And here's the truth. This level of perception doesn't make you proud, it makes you free. Because the same people who used to shock you can't move you anymore. You've outgrown surprise. You've outgrown confusion. You've even outgrown anger. You just recognize what's happening, whisper a quiet prayer, and keep walking. That's not hardness, that's healing. People get nervous around someone who can read patterns, because patterns remove their power. A manipulator can only function in confusion. A liar can only thrive in blindness. But when you can see the loop, you break it. You stop being a participant in their performance and become an observer instead. And nothing scares a deceiver more than being seen. You can tell when a conversation is steering toward manipulation because you've heard that tone before. You can tell when an argument isn't about truth but about control because you've lived that rhythm before. You can tell when someone's about to leave because their absence starts showing up in their consistency. And when you already know the pattern, you no longer need the announcement. You move on silently, peacefully, powerfully. That's what discernment looks like in practice. It's not prophecy. It's pattern awareness wrapped in peace. It's the ability to say, I don't need to see how this ends because I already know how this ends. It's knowing that the same arrogance that destroyed them last time will do it again. The same manipulation they used before will crumble the same way. The same deception that fooled others will never find footing with you. And this is where your strength becomes sacred. Because God doesn't teach discernment to make you suspicious. He teaches it to make you wise. Every storm you survived refined your spiritual radar. Every betrayal became divine training for recognition. You learned to listen, not just with ears, but with spirit. You began to see that nothing in life truly repeats, it only reveals. So when someone shows up with the same energy, the same tone, the same promises, you don't react, you recall. You remember how it ended last time? You remember how peace felt after you walked away. And that memory keeps you steady when the next test arrives. The enemy hates that. He hates that he can't shock you anymore. He used to rely on chaos to catch you off guard. But now you've seen enough patterns to recognize his rhythm, and once you know the rhythm, you can't be manipulated by the melody. You move differently. You pause before reacting. You pray before responding. You discern before deciding. That's why your presence feels intimidating. You carry the calm of someone who's been trained by truth. You see repetition and refuse participation. You've learned that new faces don't always mean new lessons. Sometimes it's the same test in a different uniform, but instead of frustration, you respond with wisdom. You don't fight the loop, you step outside of it. See, patterns are not your enemy, they're your evidence. They confirm what's real and what's counterfeit. When someone's words don't align with their rhythm, you believe the rhythm. When their intentions clash with their consistency, you believe the consistency, because talk is temporary, but behavior is legacy. And you've become fluent in that language. The best part, recognizing patterns redeems your past. All those painful experiences weren't wasted. They trained your vision. They taught you the subtle cues, the shift in tone, the repetition of excuses, the way lies always need more words than truth. You stopped calling it bad luck. You started calling it lesson learned. And that shift from pain to perception transformed your life. Now you move with foresight. You navigate rooms like a chess player who already studied the board. While others are reacting to what just happened, you're positioning for what's about to. You're not paranoid. You're prepared. You're not suspicious, you're seasoned. You've walked enough miles to trust the map God has drawn through memory. So when people say, "How did you know?" the answer is simple, because patterns always tell the story before the person does. They think you're reading minds, but you're just reading repetition. They think you're gifted, but you're simply grounded. You've learned that wisdom doesn't shout, it remembers, and now you live unshaken. You understand that discernment isn't about predicting the future, it's about interpreting the present. It's about seeing the invisible thread that ties today's actions to tomorrow's outcomes. It's about knowing that no matter how people decorate deception, the structure underneath is always the same. So stay calm, stay observant, keep reading the rhythm, because life leaves clues, and those clues were meant for you. When you recognize the pattern, you reclaim the power. You stop being the target and start being the tactician. The truth is, their patterns will always betray them before they act. That's your advantage. And when you move in that awareness, you're not just ahead of the game, you're outside of it. Fourth, O chosen ones, the moment you start waiting for permission, you stop walking in purpose. Because destiny doesn't wait for applause. Purpose doesn't wait for popularity, and calling doesn't require consensus. You weren't designed to move by the approval of others. You were designed to move by the conviction within you. Most people won't move until someone nods, claps, or validates them. They fear being wrong more than missing their moment. But the truth is, hesitation has killed more dreams than failure ever did. Every time you stop to ask, do they agree? You delay what heaven already said was yours. You weren't called to wait for comfort, you were called to obey conviction. When God whispers, go, you move. Even if no one else understands it, even if the timing feels uncomfortable, because faith doesn't wait for evidence, it creates evidence. You've learned that silence is sometimes your only confirmation, that the absence of applause doesn't mean absence of direction. Some of the greatest breakthroughs in history started with one person who dared to move when everyone else stood still. Consensus feels safe, but it's a cage. Approval feels reassuring, but it's also addictive. The crowd will never bless what it doesn't understand, and most of what God gives you won't make sense until after you've already done it. That's why you can't wait for people to catch up. They're not supposed to see it yet. God didn't show them your vision, He showed it to you. And yes, when you move first, you'll be misunderstood. They'll call you arrogant. They'll say you're impatient. But so what? They said the same about Noah when he built an ark under clear skies. They mocked Moses before the Red Sea split. They doubted David before he held Goliath's head. Faith always looks foolish until it works. And when it works, those same people who doubted you will call you wise. You see, leadership isn't about being liked, it's about being led. When you stop waiting for consensus, you start living by conviction. You no longer move by permission, you move by purpose. You stop needing agreement and start trusting alignment, because heaven's timing is rarely popular, but it's always perfect. You've realized that the crowd will clap only after the risk has paid off. But by then, the window has already closed for those who waited. That's why you step early. You'd rather walk alone in obedience than stay behind in comfort. You've learned that fear of criticism is the leash that keeps great people average. When you act by faith, criticism becomes background noise. The truth is, consensus gives comfort, but conviction gives clarity. And clarity is what the chosen walk by. You don't need the group to understand, you just need the peace that says, move now. Because by the time others see the opportunity, you've already built something from it. That's what separates pioneers from followers. When you move with conviction, your action sets the standard. You don't have to announce leadership, you demonstrate it. People eventually align with the direction of the one who moved first. You don't lead by shouting, you lead by showing. Your decisiveness creates motion. Your confidence creates gravity. And understand, this obedience without consensus is not rebellion, it's responsibility. It's knowing that some visions are too sacred to be voted on. God doesn't call committees, He calls individuals. That's why divine direction often sounds lonely. You'll have moments where no one validates you, where the silence feels deafening, but that's the sound of heaven clearing the noise so you can hear instruction clearly. Acting without consensus isn't arrogance, it's alignment. It's walking when God says walk. Even when your knees shake, it's trusting that provision will meet your obedience, not your popularity. Every miracle begins that way, with someone willing to look foolish for faith. The courage to move first is what builds the bridge for others to cross later. And yes, sometimes that means standing alone. But solitude is where strength matures. It's where leaders are formed, where faith becomes solid, and where you realize you never needed validation to be valuable. You just needed vision and the courage to act on it. People might not understand your pace because they don't carry your purpose. Don't slow down trying to explain a revelation that wasn't given to them. If they weren't in the prayer room, they won't recognize the instruction. Keep moving anyway. Because the same people who criticize your decision today will one day follow the path your decision created. When you act without consensus, you teach others what faith looks like in motion. You show them that waiting for agreement is waiting for permission to live small. You remind them that purpose rarely announces itself. It requires a step before support appears. Your courage breaks their hesitation. Your obedience gives them permission to dream again. So stop waiting for applause. Stop explaining your timing. Stop shrinking your conviction to make others comfortable. You don't need their yes when heaven already said now. Move when the Spirit says move. Speak when truth burns in your bones. Step when others hesitate. Because destiny doesn't reward the cautious, it crowns the courageous. Every breakthrough in your life will come from a moment of unpopular obedience. Every miracle will start as a misunderstood move. Every door that opens will do so for the one who dared to knock while others questioned. You are not reckless, you are ready. You are not arrogant, you are aligned. You are not impatient, you are prophetic. Because when you act without consensus, you become the signal everyone else has been waiting for. And one day when the results speak louder than your words, they'll ask, "How did you know?" And you'll smile and say, "I didn't need to know. I just needed to trust." Beloved chosen ones. Fifth, let me tell you something. Only those who've survived real storms will ever understand. You see the trap, because you've already walked through worse. You've faced the kind of darkness that doesn't just test you, it transforms you. You've been through the kind of pain that burns away illusions and leaves behind wisdom. The reason you spot danger so quickly isn't luck, it's legacy. You've walked through betrayal deep enough to make you listen differently. You've lost things you thought you couldn't live without, and that pain rewired how you see the world. Now, before others even notice a shift, you already feel it. Before they sense deception, you've already discerned it. You don't call it fear, you call it memory. What they think is intuition is just experience, sharpened to precision. People who've never been broken think caution means fear, but you know it means foresight. You move differently because survival trained you. Every scar became a map. Every mistake became a marker. Every loss became a landmark. You've seen traps dressed as opportunities and lies wrapped in kindness, and you learned how to read them before they could read you. You no longer panic when you see danger coming. You don't confuse urgency with importance. You've learned that calm isn't weakness, it's control. Because when you've already survived, the worst fear loses its leverage. You've walked through the fire. Now the smoke doesn't scare you. You've cried tears that baptized your strength, and now no storm can drown you. That's why you move with quiet confidence. You don't need to prove anything. You've outgrown panic, outlasted pressure, outlearned pain. People look at your composure and call it coldness, but it's not. It's clarity. You've learned to see through motives, not words. You can feel when energy shifts, when sincerity fades, when manipulation enters the room, and you don't fight it, you simply step aside. You've realized not every battle deserves your sword. Some traps aren't meant to fight, they're meant to avoid. You've learned the art of sidestepping chaos without announcing it. You don't shout your strength, you show it through stillness. Because silence is where wisdom lives. You see the snare, but you no longer need to expose it. You just keep walking untouched, and that unsettles people. They can't understand how you always seem to avoid disaster. They think it's luck, but it's discernment, built through endurance. You've learned to read between the lines of human behavior, the hesitation before deceit, the overconfidence before failure, the charm before betrayal. You know these rhythms because you've danced to them before. Only now you lead the rhythm. Your experience became your armor. Every failure reinforced your foundation. You faced enemies louder, stronger, more deceptive than the ones you see today. That's why nothing surprises you anymore. You've seen evil with a smile, betrayal with a prayer, and traps disguised as blessings. Now you move with discernment, not desperation. You walk with purpose, not panic. The trap doesn't tempt you because you've learned the value of peace. You no longer chase every invitation, every opportunity, every voice that calls your name. You wait for alignment. You measure intention. You trust the still small voice more than the noise of the crowd. And because of that, you keep stepping ahead while others fall into the same holes you've already climbed out of. Every storm you've endured turned into strategy. Every heartbreak turned into discernment. You don't react, you recognize. You don't assume, you anticipate. You don't need to test every path. You can tell by the ground beneath your feet, whether it's solid or sinking. You've earned that awareness through pain that others couldn't handle. And this is why fear no longer follows you. You've learned that what once tried to destroy you now serves you. Every trap that caught you before became a teacher. Every failure that humbled you became a guide. So when you see deception forming now, you simply smile because you've already survived a stronger version of it. Your history is your protection. What once felt like punishment was preparation. God didn't let those storms kill you. He used them to calibrate you. That's why you walk now with unshakable peace. You trust your instincts because they're built from experience. You see patterns before they unfold, motives before they're spoken, danger before it strikes. People wonder, how do you always know? They don't realize your vision came from pain. You earned your discernment in the fire. You trained your eyes in the dark. You felt deception close enough to memorize its heartbeat. And now, every time it tries to approach again, you recognize the rhythm. That's why you no longer fear traps. You navigate them. You step around manipulation with grace. You avoid confrontation that doesn't deserve your peace. You've stopped trying to prove what you already know. You don't need to expose evil for validation. You let time reveal it for you. Wisdom moves slower, but it never misses. What they call instinct is really intelligence. What they call mystery is really mastery. You've turned pain into perception. You've turned hardship into holy awareness. You've walked through worse, and because of that, what once would have broken you now barely shakes you. You move through life like someone who's already studied the terrain, because the map was written on your scars. The coordinates are carved into your memory. You've earned every ounce of peace you carry. And no trap, no betrayal, no hidden scheme can take it from you. So when others stumble, you stay standing. When others panic, you stay prepared. When others wonder, how did you know? You simply smile. Because you've seen this before, you've survived it before. You've already beaten worse battles than the one in front of you. That's why you move through the fire without fear. The flames can't touch what's already been refined. You see the trap not because you're paranoid, but because you've lived through the pain that built the blueprint. You walk through chaos calm because experience taught you how to make peace your strategy. You've lived through worse, and that's why you never fall the same way twice. That's why every move you make now looks miraculous. It's not miracle, it's mastery. It's what happens when survival becomes vision. You see the trap? Because you've lived through worse. And that right there is why nothing and no one can stop you now. Six, listen closely, because this is where power shifts. Silence, when mastered, becomes one of the most dangerous tools in existence. Most people fear silence. They rush to fill it, afraid of what it might reveal, but not you. You've learned that silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. It's not the absence of words, it's the presence of control. Every pause, every moment you choose not to speak is deliberate. It's a move on the board. You've realized that silence disarms louder forces. People panic when they can't read you. They overcompensate. They talk too much. They reveal too soon. And while they scramble to make sense of your quiet, you're studying, recalculating, repositioning. Your stillness is not passive, it's predatory. You wait, you observe. And when you finally act, it's surgical. You don't waste motion, you don't waste energy, and you never waste words. See, most people think power comes from speaking, but true power comes from restraint. It's knowing when to hold the space and let the silence work for you. Because silence has gravity, it pulls truth out of others. In your quiet, their confidence begins to crack. They start to wonder what you're thinking, what you've seen, what you know, and that uncertainty becomes your advantage. You've seen it happen. Someone talks themselves into a confession that you never asked for. They reveal intentions they meant to hide. They start explaining, justifying, over-explaining because they can't stand the weight of your quiet. They need your reaction to feel in control. But you don't give it to them, and that unnerves them. Because when they can't predict your response, they lose the illusion of dominance. Your silence becomes a mirror. It reflects their insecurity back at them. They start revealing the very truth they meant to bury. Every unnecessary word they spill is evidence of your control. You didn't manipulate them, you mastered yourself. And self-mastery is the highest form of dominance there is. People often misunderstand you. They think you're detached, emotionless, or uninterested. But the truth is, you're calculating. You're letting the noise expose itself while you stay anchored in calm. You've learned that words can be used as bait. The more you speak, the more you give away your intent, your rhythm, your state of mind. Silence keeps your position concealed, your emotions protected, your power intact. You use silence the way a seasoned fighter uses distance, not to retreat, but to measure range. You observe patterns, study weaknesses, and wait for the exact moment to strike. Silence gives you that timing. It allows you to act when others have exhausted themselves trying to provoke a reaction. By the time they realize what you're doing, the balance of power has already shifted. You see, in silence, perception sharpens. You start noticing details, the flicker in someone's eyes when they lie, the tremor in their voice when they exaggerate, the hesitation before they betray themselves. Noise hides truth, but silence amplifies it. When you stop talking, the world starts confessing. And here's the truth. Silence isn't about avoiding communication, it's about controlling it. You decide when, where, and how the message is delivered. You decide when to reveal and when to let others drown in their own words. The loudest person in the room is rarely the one in charge. The one who can stay silent under pressure, the one who doesn't flinch when provoked, that's the one who owns the atmosphere. Your silence speaks because it carries intention. Every pause is a message. Every withheld word forces others to question themselves. They wonder if you're ignoring them or planning something bigger. The truth is, it's both. Because silence in your hands isn't empty, it's loaded. It's deliberate. It's strategy disguised as stillness. And it terrifies people. They can argue against words, but they can't fight what isn't said. They can analyze tone, but they can't measure absence. Your silence becomes a mystery they can't solve, and fear fills the gaps their understanding can't reach. People fear what they can't define. That's why your quiet presence unsettles them more than any outburst ever could. You've learned that silence exposes everything. The insecure rush to speak, the manipulative reveal their agenda, the arrogant stumble over their own ego. But you listen, and in listening you learn. You don't just hear words, you hear motive. You don't just notice tone, you notice timing. You understand that real discernment doesn't come from reacting, it comes from waiting. Your silence is your shield. It keeps you from being baited into battles that don't matter. It protects your peace from being invaded by chaos. It allows you to observe without absorbing. While others are fighting to be heard, you're gathering data, conserving strength, and staying ready. That's not detachment, it's divine discipline. There's a holy kind of silence too, the kind that keeps you close to God while the world tries to pull you into noise. You've learned to retreat into it when everything around you demands a reaction, because silence isn't just a strategy against people, it's a sanctuary for your spirit. In quiet, you hear heaven clearly. In quiet, you remember who you are. When you use silence as a weapon, it doesn't destroy, it disarms. It makes others reveal their truth and forces situations to show their real nature. You don't argue to prove you're right. You let time and truth do that for you. Your stillness becomes your testimony. It's the power to say nothing while everything aligns in your favor. And sometimes silence hurts people more than confrontation ever could. Because confrontation gives them closure, silence gives them reflection. They start replaying their actions, reanalyzing their words, wondering what they did wrong. They begin to doubt themselves, and that doubt was your goal all along, not revenge, but realization. You've discovered that when you stop responding, people start revealing. When you go quiet, chaos loses its target. And when you stay still, storms pass quicker. Because silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. You're not ignoring the situation, you're mastering it. So when others speak too soon, you stay still. When they rush to defend you, observe. When they panic, you breathe. Because silence isn't what you do when you have nothing to say, it's what you do when you've already understood everything. And make no mistake, your silence is not weakness, it's warfare. It's the ability to weaponize patience and let pressure do the work for you. While they crumble under the noise they created, you remain untouchable in your calm. That's why they fear what you don't say more than what you do. Because in a world addicted to noise, silence becomes the loudest power of all. Seventh, this right here separates those who merely survive from those who stand. The world bends to pressure. It reacts to fear, urgency, deadlines, and threats. But you move by principle. Your compass isn't emotion, it's conviction. When others panic, you stay steady. When others compromise, you stay anchored. You don't let pressure rewrite your path. You let principle reaffirm it. See, most people make decisions based on the moment, the noise, the chaos, the tension. They let fear speed them up or insecurity slow them down. But when you've built your life on principles, storms don't change your direction, they just prove your foundation. You've learned that pressure doesn't shape your values, it reveals them. You don't react to the world, you respond from within. And that's what confuses people. They expect you to bend, to rush, to yield when circumstances tighten. But instead you remain calm. They mistake that calm for indifference. They think you don't feel the heat. But in truth, you simply refuse to let heat determine your motion. Pressure to you is confirmation, not control. You see, when your values are fixed, your path is too Integrity isn't something you negotiate, it's the road you walk on. And no amount of urgency can make you step off it. You've learned that if you compromise to relieve the pressure, you'll pay double later to regain your peace. So now you don't rush to escape tension, you stay still until truth reveals itself. That's what makes you unshakable. People don't understand that your calm isn't built on comfort, it's built on clarity. You know where you stand. You know what you believe. And you know what you refuse to become. That awareness makes you immovable in a world that worships convenience. You've seen it happen again and again. People abandon principle to please pressure. They sell their peace for speed. They trade truth for approval, but not you. You've been through too much to chase what doesn't last. You know that fast decisions built on fear always collapse under time. So you move slower, deeper, wiser. You let conviction, not case, determine your pace. And it's not that you're fearless. You just know where to place your fear. You fear God, not gossip. You fear dishonor, not discomfort. That's why you can stand still when everyone else is trembling. You understand that pressure is temporary, but integrity is eternal. Your calm under fire is unsettling to people. It exposes the shallowness of their confidence. When they see you unbothered by what terrifies them, they start to question themselves. They start asking, what do they know that I don't? They call it intuition, but it's not. It's principle. You're guided by truth that doesn't change no matter the season. And that's the secret. What looks like prophecy is actually discipline. You don't predict the future, you prepare for it. You don't guess outcomes, you align with values that guarantee them. People mistake your consistency for foresight because they don't understand the stability that comes from living by principle. You don't chase approval, you chase accuracy. You don't move to be liked, you move to be right. That's why your timing feels supernatural, because you're not reacting to what's urgent, you're responding to what's true. Urgency will scream. Truth will whisper, and you've trained yourself to listen to the whisper. Pressure can't manipulate a person who knows their principles. You can threaten them, rush them, insult them, but you can't move them, because they understand that surrendering principle for comfort always costs more than waiting in faith. And you've paid that cost before. You've made decisions too fast, spoken too soon, trusted too easily, and you learned that speed without strategy is self-sabotage. Now, you walk differently. You take your time, you measure your words, you consider the outcome beyond the moment, because you understand that every decision you make is a seed and you refuse to plant chaos. You've matured into a person who doesn't need to control situations to win. You simply remain true until time reveals your correctness. That's why your presence feels prophetic. Because while others are consumed by panic, you're guided by patience. You're operating from an eternal perspective. You're not just thinking about today, you're building for decades. You understand that shortcuts cost more than sacrifice. That's why you never trade long-term peace for short-term praise. And here's the truth. Discipline is divine foresight. People call it intuition, when really it's wisdom born from restraint. You don't need to know every detail of the future when your principles already guarantee alignment with it. Pressure makes people unpredictably, but principle makes you inevitably. When everything starts collapsing around you, you don't react, you remember. You remember who you are, what you stand for, and who sent you. You anchor yourself, not in the changing winds, but in the eternal truth that storms always pass. You don't negotiate your values because you've already decided who you are before pressure arrives. That's how you keep composure when others lose it. Your calmness isn't absence of fear, it's evidence of faith. Faith that what's right will remain right, even when wrong seems louder. Faith that the truth always outlasts the test. You don't fight to prove you're right, you endure until it becomes undeniable. And that endurance, that unshakable commitment to principle, is what bends outcomes in your favor, because pressure cannot defeat a person who refuses to let it redefine them. You stand so firm in your integrity that it becomes contagious. The people around you begin to slow down. They start to question their impulses. Your steadiness becomes the mirror that exposes their chaos. You don't demand control. You create calm. You don't fight for dominance. You walk in direction. And that direction comes from discipline. When others flinch, you hold position. When they panic, you pause. When they chase, you choose. That's strategy, not stubbornness. It's foresight built on faith. You've realized that true strength isn't loud, it's rooted. The oak tree doesn't move because of the wind, it bends, it absorbs, it waits. That's how you navigate life. You adjust your branches, but your roots stay the same. Your values are non-negotiable, and that's what keeps you grounded while others drift. So when people look at your calm and call it mysterious, when they whisper, "How do you always know what to do?" you just smile. You don't always know, you're just disciplined enough to wait for the right time to move. You don't predict the storm, you prepare for it. You don't panic under pressure, you pivot through it. Because you don't navigate by fear, you navigate by faith. You don't bend to pressure, you're built by principle. And that's why your direction always leads to peace, even when the path looks chaotic. You're not guessing, you're grounded. You're not rushing, you're rooted. You're not prophetic, you're principled. And that right there is why the world calls your clarity supernatural. Eighth, not everything that glitters is gold, and not every open hand carries blessing. Sometimes the gift is the bait, the opportunity is the snare, and the favor is a leash disguised as kindness. The world will offer you things that look like blessings but feel like bondage. And if you don't learn to weigh intention, you'll find yourself trapped by what you thought was grace. You've been alive long enough to know this manipulation often dresses like generosity. The wrong people will wrap their motives in shiny paper and call it help. But discernment sees through the wrapping. You don't just look at what's offered, you look at why it's offered. You listen for the tone behind the praise, the motive beneath the smile, the conditions hidden inside the kindness. Because gifts aren't always free, they often come with strings. And the heavier the string, the quieter the trap. That's why you've learned to measure intention, not appearance. You don't chase every golden opportunity. You stop and ask, what does this require of me? What does it attach me to? What will it cost me later? You understand that sometimes the most powerful move you can make isn't accepting, it's declining. Turning something down doesn't mean you're ungrateful, it means you're wise. You know that true blessings don't need to manipulate you into receiving them. They don't rush you, corner you, or flatter you into saying yes. A real blessing stands firm in the light. Only traps hide in urgency. You've learned to pay attention to energy, not packaging. Some offers sound holy but feel heavy. Some doors open wide but lead to confinement. Some alliances promisent élévation, but délivre exhaustion. That's why you've stopped chasing everything that calls itself divine timing. Because not every door is from God. Some are designed to distract you from Him. Your ability to say no has become your power. Refusal is a language most people don't understand. They think you're prideful when really you're protecting peace. They think you're arrogant when really you've just learned not to rent your loyalty to the highest bidder. The truth is, discernment always looks cold to those who benefit from your blindness. You've been through enough setups to know the signs. You've seen how flattery always precedes favor with strings. You felt how false generosity comes with a contract in fine print. You can tell when someone's gift is really a test to measure how cheaply your attention can be bought. That's why you move differently now. You no longer accept invitations that feel off, no matter how glamorous they sound. You no longer confuse connection with calling or attention with alignment. And yes, it confuses people. They can't understand why you'd walk away from what looks so perfect. They don't see what you see. They only see the shine, you see the chain. They only see the door, you see the lock on the other side. That's not suspicion, that's spiritual maturity. You've learned that discernment is protection disguised as discomfort. Every time you've ignored your intuition in the past, you've paid for it. Every time you silenced your spirit's warning, you ended up learning the hard way. But not anymore. You've reached a point where peace has become your highest currency. If it costs your peace, it's too expensive. You no longer accept deals that disturb your spirit. You've learned that the devil doesn't always show up with horns. Sometimes he shows up with a handshake. He'll offer shortcuts that feel divine, favors that feel urgent, or relationships that feel meant to be. But discernment will whisper, something's off. And that whisper, if you listen, will save your destiny. You've stopped confusing blessings with bargains. Real blessings don't need negotiation. They align with who you are, not manipulate you into becoming something else. Real favor doesn't dangle benefits to buy obedience. It comes naturally, without weight, without strings. That's how you know the difference between opportunity and entanglement. When you start turning down the wrong gifts, you make space for the right ones. Declining becomes declaration. I know who I am, and I know what I'm worth. Every no sharpens your authority. Every no guards your purpose. Because the same people who use gifts to control you will use gratitude to guilt you. They'll say, after all I did for you, but you'll stand firm because you didn't ask for their trap in the first place. Your discernment makes manipulators nervous. They can't control you because you no longer need what they offer. They can't bait you because your peace is not for sale. You've broken the cycle of being drawn into chaos through flattery. You've realized that not every connection is divine and not every opportunity is ordained. Some are distractions sent to drain your energy and dilute your purpose. This awareness has made your path cleaner. You don't move because something looks good. You move because it feels right in your spirit. You test motives before you trust them. You take your time, you pray before you proceed, and that pause, those seconds of silence between the offer and your answer, that's where heaven speaks. The world moves fast, but wisdom doesn't. Wisdom waits, listens, and weighs the unseen. That's why people mistake your patience for hesitation. They think you're slow to decide, but really you're reading the fine print in the spirit. You're asking, does this serve my peace or steal it? Because blessings never require you to betray yourself. And that discernment has made you dangerous in the best way. You no longer walk into traps disguised as thrones. You no longer let urgency pressure you into bondage. You've developed the courage to say no, even when everything in the room is shouting yes. That's authority. That's freedom. When you refuse manipulation, you reclaim control. When you say no to bait, you stop living reactively. You start living intentionally. That's why your decisions look mysterious to others. They can't understand why you passed on that job, that relationship, that opportunity. But you know peace is priceless, and not every path leads upward. You've realized something powerful. The blessing isn't always the thing offered, it's the wisdom to refuse it. You've turned your discernment into direction. You've stopped confusing motion with progress and opportunity with destiny. You've learned that every true blessing will fit your spirit, not stretch your boundaries. So now when something comes your way that looks too good to be true, you pause, you pray, you listen. Because you've seen enough to know that not every gift is meant to be open. Some are meant to be left at the door. And that, my friend, is power. The ability to say no without guilt, to walk away without regret, to discern intention before deception. That's how you keep your path clean, your peace intact, and your purpose undiluted. So when people ask, why did you turn that down? You don't explain. You just smile and say, because I've learned to tell the difference between a blessing and bait, and that's why you keep winning. Not by taking more, but by accepting less with wisdom. Ninth, this is the moment where wisdom separates you from the crowd. Because while the world calls it loss, you've learned to call it redirection. You don't crumble when things fall apart, you adapt. You don't chase what's leaving you, let it go. You've learned that endings aren't the enemy of destiny, they're the doorway to it. Most people panic when something slips away. They cling to what's dying because they fear emptiness. But you've been through enough to know that what's meant for you cannot leave, and what's leaving was never meant to stay. You no longer cry over closed doors because you trust the one who closes them. Every exit in your life has been an act of divine protection. You used to call it loss. Now you call it clarity. You see, maturity has taught you that loss is not the end of a chapter, it's an edit. When something leaves your life, it doesn't create lack, it creates space. You don't grieve empty rooms anymore. You see them as construction zones for what's next. Because every time you've been emptied, you've been prepared to be filled again, only stronger, wiser, more focused. While others measure life by what they keep, you measure it by what you survive. You've turned loss into language, pain into pattern, endings into elevation. You've stopped asking, why did this happen, and started asking, what is this trying to make me become? That one shift changed everything. People who live in fear of loss keep their hands closed. They cling, they hoard, they resist, but closed hands can't receive anything new. You've learned to keep your grip light. You don't hold things hostage out of fear. They stay because they fit, and when they stop fitting, you bless them as they go. You don't live by attachment, you live by alignment. That's why peace follows you. You're not burdened by the weight of what's gone. You know that when God removes, He's also replacing. What leaves makes room for what's meant. You no longer see subtraction as punishment, but as preparation. God isn't taking from you, He's clearing for you. You've learned that real loss isn't when something leaves, it's when you lose yourself trying to hold it. You don't chase what's fading anymore. You don't beg for what betrayed its season. You've made peace with endings because you've learned to read them as transitions. The door that closes today often protects the destiny that opens tomorrow. When others lose, they break down, you break through. They mourn what's missing, you mobilize around what remains. You don't fight the shift, you flow with it. Because you know every change carries an invitation to rise higher, to think clearer, to move freer. And that's what people don't understand about you. They see calm where they'd expect chaos. They see focus where they'd expect fear. They think you're unaffected, but you're just anchored. You've been through enough storms to know the wind can't shake what's rooted in faith. What they call unbothered is really unbreakable. Loss doesn't intimidate you because you've learned how to interpret it. You've seen that what you lose in one season becomes your wisdom in the next. Every heartbreak has made your heart stronger. Every failure has refined your aim. Every disappointment has cleaned your direction. You've stopped labeling things as mistakes, they're messages. While the world mourns what's missing, you study the space that's left. You reorganize, rebuild, reimagine. You treat emptiness as opportunity. Because when something leaves, it doesn't reduce your value, it reveals your capacity. The void isn't void, it's vision waiting to form. And make no mistake that mindset makes you powerful. People panic to protect their possessions. You protect your peace. They chase the illusion of control. You trust divine flow. They see endings as evidence of failure. You see them as evolution. That's why your life keeps advancing while others stay stuck trying to resurrect what's over. You've learned to say, if it left, it's not my loss, it's my lesson. Because everything that truly belongs to you will align effortlessly. You don't need to beg for it, manipulate it, or suffer to keep it. You just need to stay in position, and what's meant for you will recognize you when the time is right. You've also learned that redirection doesn't always feel peaceful at first. Sometimes it looks like heartbreak, confusion, or delay. But over time, you see the pattern. You realize that God uses subtraction as strategy, The things you thought were falling apart were actually falling into place. You've stopped calling it loss. When a job ends, a friendship fades, or a dream shifts, you've learned to say, that's not the end, it's evidence that I'm being rerouted. The very things you cried over once became the reason you grew. The doors that slammed shut saved you from smaller versions of yourself. You now see that holding on too long costs more than letting go. The pain of release lasts a moment. The pain of resistance lasts a lifetime. That's why you move quickly when the season changes. You don't try to fix what's finished. You don't resurrect what's expired. You honor it and move on. This perspective has become your superpower. You don't waste time chasing explanations. You trust the exchange. You've stopped mourning what's gone and started mastering what's next. You see life as a series of divine adjustments, each one making you more efficient, more focused, more faithful. You've learned that loss clarifies what's real. When the noise fades, what remains is truth. When the crowd leaves, what remains is character. When the plan fails, what remains is purpose. That's how you calculate differently. You don't count what's missing, you count what's meaningful. And people notice, they ask, how do you stay calm when things fall apart? You tell them, because I stopped seeing things fall apart. I see them fall into order. That's your secret. You've learned to read between the ruins. You've discovered that peace is not the absence of loss, it's the presence of perspective. Now you move differently. You no longer let panic make your decisions. You don't worship what you have and you don't curse what you lose. You bless both, because both serve your growth. You see the hand of God not only in the gifts but in the removals. And that realization has made you untouchable. You've realized that sometimes the only way to make space for destiny is through divine subtraction. The pruning isn't punishment, it's proof of potential. Trees don't fear pruning, they flourish because of it. You've learned to do the same. Every loss trims you down to your truest self. Every removal redirects you closer to your mission. So now, when something or someone exits your life, you don't chase, you check alignment. You ask, is this space sacred now? Because what feels like loss is often just God making room for growth. You calculate loss differently. While they see endings, you see evolution. While they panic over subtraction, you prepare for multiplication. While they cling to what's dying, you're already building what's next. That's why you walk in peace, while others live in panic. You know what they don't. You can't lose what's divine, and you can't keep what's counterfeit. What's meant for you will never need manipulation. And what's leaving you now is simply clearing your path for what's becoming you next. You no longer cry over closed doors. You thank them for their service. You no longer fear losing things, you fear losing focus. Because you've learned that every loss has purpose, every ending has order, and every redirection is a divine recalibration toward destiny. So no, you don't calculate loss like they do. You don't count what's gone, you count what's growing. You don't cling to what's fading, you cling to what's faithful. And that right there is why you never truly lose. Next, beloved chosen ones. Most people look but never see. They move through life distracted by the noise, missing the truth hidden in plain sight. But not you. You've trained yourself to look deeper, to turn observation into architecture. Every detail, every silence, every flicker of human behavior becomes a brick in the invisible structure you're building. You don't live reactively. You live architecturally. When others think you're acting on impulse, you're actually executing a design years in the making. Your moves look effortless because they stand on scaffolding no one else can see. What the world calls intuition is really structure, patterns, memorized connections, mapped lessons stored and retrieved at the exact right moment. You've learned that precision isn't magic, it's the quiet reward of paying attention. You don't collect moments, you catalog, meaning When someone speaks, you hear the tone beneath the words. When something happens, you see the pattern inside the event. You treat life like blueprints drawn by God Himself, knowing every conversation, failure, and delay carries hidden data. You store it not in fear, but in readiness. Because when others stumble into repetition, you recognize the rhythm before it starts. Your foresight unsettles people. They think you guess right, but you've simply observed long enough to see how life loops. Betrayal has a signature, manipulation leaves footprints, and opportunity moves in cycles. You track those repetitions until you can sense them before they surface. That's why you move early, because you recognize the echo. You don't just see people, you see patterns. You notice how one's pride mirrors another's downfall, how silence follows guilt, how praise precedes deceit. You connect those threads quietly, building understanding layer by layer until clarity becomes instinct. That's why your decisions look divine. They're built on discernment disguised as discipline. Every action you take rests on unseen foundations. To the world, it looks like luck. To you, it's architecture. You don't improvise, you implement. You've rehearsed every move mentally before it reaches motion. While others rush to act, you analyze. While they react to events, you read the structure behind them. Life doesn't happen randomly. It reveals its framework to those patient enough to study it. You've learned that stillness is strategy. You use silence to observe, to gather, to construct. You don't speak to fill space, you speak to build bridges. You don't move because of pressure, you move because the blueprint demands it. Your calm is your construction zone. Every quiet moment becomes a place where you sketch, refine, and prepare. That's why your timing feels perfect. It's not prophecy, it's preparation. You've already run the simulation in your spirit. You've already tested the foundation in prayer. You don't need to react when chaos hits, because you already built the structure that keeps you steady. To others, it's mystery. To you, it's math. Your discipline gives shape to what others call destiny. You don't hope things work out, you design them to. You understand that foresight isn't about knowing everything. It's about connecting enough dots to predict the path. You've stopped chasing signs. You create systems. You've stopped waiting for alignment. You build it brick by brick through awareness. And that's what makes you unshakable. When storms come, people crumble because they built their lives on sand, on emotion, approval, impulse. You built yours on structure. You laid every stone intentionally. Wisdom, patience, discernment, principle. When pressure hits, your foundation holds. You're not guessing, you're grounded. People can't understand how you stay so calm when things collapse. But you've already studied collapse. You've seen how systems fail, how habits repeat, how cycles end. You build for it. You anticipate it. And when it comes, you don't break, you bend, because you designed yourself to withstand what others fear. That's why they call your results supernatural. But the truth is, your success isn't sudden, it's structured. You've been gathering fragments for years, turning every mistake into measurement, every setback into scaffolding. You don't throw away experience, you recycle it. What broke you once now builds you twice as strong. You've become an engineer of destiny. You don't just live through life, you study it, sketch it, sculpt it. You recognize that every season gives you material wisdom, from pain perspective, from waiting, resilience from failure. You take those materials and you build quietly, patiently, until the invisible becomes visible and everyone around you calls it overnight. You've realized that vision isn't just seeing, it's structuring. You don't look at what is, you imagine what could be. You see how small details shape large outcomes, how timing turns talent into triumph. You know that strategy is spiritual. God doesn't bless chaos, He blesses construction. That's why you never rush, because anything rushed can't last. You've also learned the discipline of interpretation. You don't just observe, you understand. You interpret patterns through purpose. You filter what you see through faith. Every connection you make, every lesson you draw passes through the question, does this align with my calling? Because not all information deserves integration. That's how you keep your architecture pure. You don't build from ego, you build from essence. You don't gather details to manipulate, you gather to master. You've learned that wisdom is stewardship, observation is a gift, but architecture is obedience. It's what happens when insight meets action, when revelation becomes responsibility, and that's the difference between you and them. They see you win and call it coincidence. It's consequence, the result of years of attention. You've learned to turn seeing into shaping awareness, into advantage. While others live by reaction, you live by design. You are not reacting to the world, you're structuring how it will respond to you. That's why your every move feels intentional. Because you've turned observation into foresight, foresight into formation, formation into fulfillment. You no longer stumble into purpose, you build it. You don't wait for miracles, you create environments where miracles manifest naturally. And when they ask, how did you know? You simply smile, because it wasn't luck, it wasn't guessing. It was the architecture of awareness. It was the unseen scaffolding of stillness, faith, and discipline. Every great builder knows the strength of any structure lies beneath the surface. That's where your genius lives, in the unseen, in the observed, in the designed. You don't just notice life, you build from it. You don't just see, you structure. You are the architect of your own becoming, the builder of invisible blueprints that others will spend years trying to decipher. That's your power. That's your calm. That's your mastery. You've turned observation into architecture, and that's why everything you build stands. Chosen ones. 11th. This is where your vision becomes something far greater than perception. Most people spend their lives trying to predict people. They focus on faces, moods, words, and motives, believing that if they can understand the individual, they can master the situation. But you've gone deeper. You've realized that people are just parts of a larger design. You don't just read individuals, you read the system that shapes them. You've learned that every decision, every reaction, every conflict is rarely personal, it's structural. People don't move in isolation, they move under influence. Culture, hierarchy, fear, opportunity, all these invisible forces act like gravity, pulling choices toward predictable outcomes. And because you understand that your moves are never random, you move with rhythm. You move in sync with systems. That's why your timing feels supernatural. While others react to emotions, you respond to momentum. When a shift is coming, not because someone told you, but because you felt the system tilting long before the people inside it noticed. You've studied the architecture of influence, how groups behave, how power circulates, how institutions evolve, and how environments condition reactions. You've stopped asking, why did they do that, and started asking, what pressure made them do that? That shift in awareness is everything. It frees you from taking things personally. You see beyond the surface of conflict, beyond the face of betrayal, beyond the words of flattery. You understand that every move made against you often isn't about you, it's about the forces behind them. That's why you stay calm when others panic. You're not fighting people, you're reading patterns. When others feel blindsided, you're already braced. You know that systems have rhythms, political, emotional, spiritual, and those rhythms repeat. Every cycle reveals its next step if you know where to look. That's why you can walk into chaos and move with precision. You're not reacting to what's loud, you're responding to what's logical. You understand that behind every explosion lies pressure, and behind every collapse lies imbalance. You don't just look at the players, you study the board. You see the hierarchy, the unspoken rules, the flow of energy between people. You recognize how systems reward conformity, punish authenticity, and repeat patterns until someone breaks them. That's why your steps look like prophecy. They're built on pattern recognition, refined by patience. Others waste time managing personalities. You manage ecosystems. You observe the forces that drive them, the ambition, the fear, the scarcity, the power struggles. You've realized that trying to control individuals is like chasing waves. Understanding the tide is how you master the ocean. And here's what makes that dangerous. Most people are blind to their environment. They act like they have free will when they're being pulled by invisible gravity. But you see it? You recognize how one small policy, one rumor, one change in leadership can shift an entire culture. You move accordingly, adjusting before the quake hits. Your foresight comes from reading context, not characters. When others ask, how did you know that was coming? They don't realize you were watching the currents while they were watching the surface. You saw where the pressure was building. You saw the imbalance in energy. You saw the outcome long before the event. And because of that, your movements unsettle people. You act before they decide, arrive before they prepare, and speak before they even realize what needs to be said. It's not intuition, it's intelligence. It's a deep awareness of systems, structures, and cycles. You've trained yourself to think in layers. You know that behind every visible moment lies an invisible mechanism pushing it forward. You've learned that systems, not people, determine most of what happens. Families, companies, governments, churches, they all run on feedback loops. Some are healthy, most are not. You read those loops and anticipate their outcomes. You know when a system is about to collapse because you've seen how pressure accumulates before the break. You know when a culture is about to shift because you've studied the language people use before the change. That's what makes your insight unsettling. People assume you're just good with words, but you're good with worlds. You don't memorize actions. You model dynamics. You build mental maps of how power, faith, emotion, and fear circulate. You understand that human behavior is predictable when you know the system it lives inside. Your calm in chaos isn't apathy, it's comprehension. You know that panic is a product of proximity. The closer you are to a problem, the bigger it feels. But when you rise high enough to see the whole field, fear turns into foresight. You see that nothing is random, only misread. You've stopped living from moment to moment and started living from movement to movement. That's why you don't get trapped in drama. You step back and ask, what structure is sustaining this? Because every storm has a source, every problem has a pattern. Every betrayal, every opportunity, every collapse, each is a symptom of a larger system doing exactly what it was designed to do. You don't waste energy trying to fix symptoms. You address systems. You've realized that real strategy is systemic. You don't fight the wave. You surf it. You don't resist the season, you read it. You align your pace with divine timing, not emotional urgency. When the system speeds up, you slow down. When it slows, you accelerate. You've learned to move counter to chaos. That's why your steps always look in sync with destiny. They are, and let's be clear, this isn't manipulation. It's mastery. You're not controlling people. You're understanding patterns. You're not bending others to your will. You're aligning yourself with higher order. You've learned that wisdom doesn't fight flow, it cooperates with it. That's why you navigate without friction. People who live emotionally are easily misled. But you live architecturally, you think in networks, not names. When someone acts against you, you don't get offended. You look for the system that made it inevitable. That's spiritual maturity. You've stopped trying to win arguments and started changing environments. Because when you fix the system, the behavior fixes itself. You've trained yourself to see the world like a chessboard, but you don't just play the game, you read its algorithm. You see how every move triggers another, how energy redistributes itself, how small choices ripple into massive shifts. You understand that everything, faith, business, family, society, is interconnected. That's why you move like someone who's already seen the map. And that's what confuses people. They think you're ahead because you move fast. But you're ahead because you think wide. You see, in dimensions they don't even realize exist. You don't just anticipate what's next, you anticipate why it's next. You predict cause, not consequence. This is why systems fear you. Institutions can control people who react, but not those who read. You can't be manipulated by pressure because you understand its purpose. You know that every system from spiritual to social runs on cause and effect. And you've learned to position yourself in the flow of truth rather than the trap of emotion. When people ask, how are you always in the right place at the right time? The answer is simple. You're not reacting to chance, you're reading structure. You don't chase timing, you align with it. You don't follow trends, you forecast them. You understand that divine timing and systemic awareness often look the same. You've become fluent in the unseen language of systems, how energy transfers, how motives multiply, how forces align. That's why your steps seem synchronized with destiny itself. You're not guessing, you're guided. You've learned to hear what others ignore, to see what others overlook, and to act when the rhythm of the system demands it. That's the mark of mastery, not predicting people, but perceiving patterns that govern them. You move with harmony because you've tuned your awareness to the frequency of order. You don't just live within systems, you transcend them. So when they ask, how did you know, you smile? Because you weren't guessing their next move, you were reading the forces that made it inevitable. Next, let me tell you something that separates the wise from the wandering. Most people forget too easily. They treat information like noise, moments like dust, and details like distractions. But you know you're different. You remember what others dismiss. You collect fragments, the numbers, the names, the glances, the pauses, the patterns. You hold them quietly until one day they connect, and when they do, what looks like coincidence to others feels like divine alignment to you. You've learned that wisdom doesn't always come in loud lessons. Sometimes it hides in small whispers, brief exchanges, fleeting details. The world moves fast and forgets faster, but you don't. You've disciplined your mind to record the seemingly insignificant because you understand that the smallest data point can unlock the biggest revelation. Most people wait for grand moments of insight. You build them, one observation at a time. You understand that knowledge is cumulative, not accidental. What others call instinct is often just memory sharpened over time. You've turned your mind into an archive, storing what others discard, organizing what others overlook. And in doing so, you've created a map that no one else possesses. That's your quiet advantage. You don't rely on chance. You rely on collection. Every name you've heard, every habit you've noticed, every reaction you've witnessed becomes part of your living library. You don't just store facts, you weave them into frameworks. And when life circles back months or years later, those fragments fall perfectly into place. People call it luck, but you know it's just the return of a pattern you already recorded. You see, to most people, the world feels random. To you, it feels rhythmic, because you've paid attention long enough to see how events echo through time, how a gesture from 5 years ago reappears in a moment of truth today, how a forgotten detail becomes the missing piece in a crisis. You never throw away information because you understand that time eventually redeems it. That's why your responses seem so sharp. You're not improvising, you're retrieving. When others scramble for context, you already have the coordinates. You don't need to guess what's happening because you remember what happened before. And that memory, refined by patience and protected by humility, becomes your compass. You've mastered something most never. Do the art of accumulation without overload. You know how to collect without cluttering, how to organize without obsession. You don't hoard, you harvest. Every detail is cataloged not just by fact but by meaning. You don't just remember what was said, you remember why it mattered. You remember tone, timing, energy, the subtle signals that reveal truth behind appearance. This is what gives you the upper hand in a world addicted to forgetting. Everyone else is too busy reacting to the present. You, however, live with continuity. You understand that today's events are rarely new. They're continuations of yesterday's ignored patterns. That's why you always seem ahead. You're not predicting the future. You're remembering its setup. Your awareness makes people uncomfortable because it feels supernatural. They can't understand how you always just know. They don't realize you've been quietly watching, storing, and connecting dots they thought didn't matter. You remember the gesture? They forgot. They made the inconsistency. They thought they hid the hesitation. They thought no one caught. You never confront it. You simply prepare for when it resurfaces. And when it does, you're ready. Your moves are deliberate because your data is deep. Others rely on emotion. You rely on evidence. You've seen enough repetition to know that history never leaves. It only loops. You've learned to study those loops until they form a language only you can read. That's why your timing feels prophetic. When something happens, you don't react with surprise. You nod in recognition because you saw the shadow of this moment long before it arrived. You recognized its DNA in a conversation, in a pattern, in a word someone dismissed as casual. You remembered, and that memory became foresight. You've trained yourself to keep your mental archives active but calm. You don't boast about what you know. You let time reveal it. Because true mastery doesn't need to announce itself. It simply acts when alignment appears. And when that moment comes, you move with precision that looks impossible to the unprepared. The secret: you never rush understanding. You let knowledge age. You let patterns mature. You let connections prove themselves over time. You know that patience is the bridge between observation and revelation. And while everyone else demands instant clarity, you wait because you understand that truth reveals itself to those who endure it. You've turned memory into momentum. Every lesson you've kept has become leverage. You draw from an invisible reservoir of experience that others abandoned too early. That's why you don't repeat old mistakes, you remember their structure. You can feel when history is trying to repeat itself, and you stop it before it does. That awareness is not paranoia, it's protection. You've also learned the spiritual side of this: God doesn't waste information. Every word you've heard, every detail you've caught, every season you've survived, it all serves purpose. Some knowledge you don't use immediately because it's not meant for the moment, it's meant for the mission ahead. When that mission arrives, revelation rushes back like a river, and suddenly everything clicks. That's why you honor memory as holy. You understand that remembering isn't about nostalgia, it's about navigation. The past isn't your prison, it's your blueprint. The details you've preserved aren't burdens, they're coordinates. Every scrap of knowledge, every observation you kept, every subtle truth you refused to discard has become part of the divine pattern that guides your steps. And this is what separates you from the world's noise. While they chase novelty, you chase nuance. They want what's loud, you listen for what's lasting. They trade truth for trends. You trade distraction for depth. You know that wisdom is rarely obvious. It hides in repetition, in silence, in moments too small for most to care about. You've stopped underestimating small things because you've seen how one remembered sentence can open a door, how one stored insight can save a lifetime, how one pattern recognized can prevent disaster. That's the power of retention, the quiet discipline of keeping what others throw away. Your strength doesn't come from knowing everything. It comes from not forgetting what mattered. You don't need to predict, you just need to remember deeply enough to recognize when the old returns disguised as new. That's how you navigate life with such grace. You don't chase clarity, you construct it from fragments. And while others live in short-term cycles of reaction, you live in long-term circles of revelation. You understand that wisdom is cumulative. You know that small details eventually form the architecture of understanding. What others call miracles, you call the natural result of memory meeting patience. So when people ask, how did you see that coming? You don't explain. Because how do you explain years of noticing what others ignored? You simply smile because you know the truth. The secret isn't seeing more, it's remembering longer. That's why your advantage will always endure. You don't move faster than others, you move fuller. Every step you take carries the weight of memory, the guidance of connection, the precision of patience. You've built an inner network so complete that nothing truly surprises you anymore. While others discard the fragments, you collect them. While they move on, you store, and when time reveals what was hidden, you're already standing where they thought chance placed you. But it wasn't chance, it was consistency. Because that's what mastery really is. The patience to keep the knowledge others forget. Thirteenth, O chosen ones, listen carefully because this is the level where time itself becomes your battlefield. Most people fight what's in front of them. They swing at what they can see. But you move differently. You don't just fight the moment, you shape the momentum. You plant actions today that will echo months, years, even decades from now. You don't play for applause, you play for outcome. And by the time others realize what you've done, the chain reaction has already begun. You've learned that true power doesn't exist in reaction, it lives in design. Every decision you make is part of a structure unfolding quietly in the background. To the impatient, you look slow. To the unwise, you look hesitant. But you're not hesitant, you're calculating. You're setting traps along the timeline, designing movements that bloom in sequence. Your restraint is strategy. Your silence is setup. Every small action is a fuse waiting to meet its spark. You've stopped fighting temporary battles because you've learned how time exposes truth. You no longer waste energy trying to win arguments or prove points in the present. You act knowing that time will vindicate your patience. The world calls it delayed gratification, you call it divine synchronization. You understand that every choice today plants something in the soil of tomorrow. That's why you move slowly but strike suddenly, because your victories mature while others chase speed. To the casual observer, your patience looks like uncertainty. They can't see the depth of your design. They don't realize you've already mapped the outcomes, 3 layers deep. You've planned the cause, the effect, and the echo. You've learned that the best strategy is often invisible. While they rush to move first, you prepare to move last and win completely. You understand that time isn't just passing, it's participating. It's your silent collaborator. You don't fight against it, you work with it. Every delay, every pause, every apparent setback becomes part of the orchestration. You know how to let time do the heavy lifting, because you've seen how chaos burns itself out when given enough space. You've learned that sometimes the most powerful move is to wait. Your patience isn't passive, it's precise. It's an act of warfare disguised as wisdom. You're not sitting still. You're watching the board rearrange itself until every piece favors you. You've realized that those who act without timing create noise, not impact. But those who align with time itself create inevitability. And that's what you build: inevitable outcomes. You don't fight people, you fight patterns. You don't react to moments, you respond to movements. You see the long arc of consequence and position yourself along it. You understand that a seed doesn't argue with the soil, it just grows when the season arrives. You live by that truth. You sow now, so that your harvest shows when everyone else has forgotten you planted. People underestimate the power of foresight because they crave immediacy. But you know, patience is not weakness, it's weaponized vision. You use delay to disarm stillness, to confuse, and consistency to crush. While others chase recognition, you're cultivating inevitability. They see what's happening now, you see what's already set in motion. That's why your results seem unstoppable. When your plan unfolds, it feels like prophecy to everyone watching. But the truth is, it's simply the reward of structure meeting season. The architecture of your patience meets the momentum of divine timing, and together they create miracles that look effortless. You've trained yourself to think generationally. You don't build for applause today, you build for alignment tomorrow. You're not living for validation, you're living for legacy. Every choice, every silence, every yes and no you make is part of a ripple designed to move long after you're gone. While others chase the immediate, you plant the eternal. You've also learned how to disguise strategy as surrender. Sometimes you let others believe they've won because you're watching how they handle victory. Sometimes you retreat not out of fear, but out of foresight. You know that stepping back today positions you for dominance tomorrow. You've stopped fighting every battle because you understand some fights aren't meant to be won, they're meant to be watched. The people who misunderstand you think you're passive, but they don't see the architecture of your patience. They don't realize that what looks like stillness is structure forming beneath the surface. You're moving through dimensions they can't perceive: time, cause, alignment, consequence. You're not reacting to the world, you're orchestrating it in advance. You've become fluent in the language of timing. You know when to speak, when to wait, when to act, and when to disappear. You understand that premature action can destroy divine design, so you let things mature before you move. And when you move, the impact is irreversible. You don't force outcomes, you time them. That's why you win wars. Others don't even know they're fighting. You've learned to play the long game. While they celebrate small victories, you're already positioning for permanent influence. Your enemies prepare for a single confrontation. You prepare for a legacy. You understand that power isn't just about the next move, it's about the next era. The discipline to think long-term has made you unshakable. You've learned that short-term chaos can't touch someone who's aligned with long-term order. You can stand still in a storm because you've already seen its end. You've trained your spirit to trust divine process even when the progress is invisible. You don't need to see results right away. You already know how the story ends. This is what makes your strategy so terrifying to those who try to oppose you. They're always late. They move when you've already finished. They react to outcomes you designed months ago. They think you're responding, but you're revealing. Every event they interpret as chance is just another stage in the sequence you set in motion long ago. You've made peace with the slow burn of destiny. You've learned that real transformation takes time. That structure built too quickly collapses just as fast. So you construct your victories the same way God constructs seasons. Silently, steadily, and perfectly timed. By the time the world notices, the foundation is already unshakable. And here's the truth that sets you apart. You're not fighting the present, you're preparing the future. You understand that battles fought in the moment fade, but systems built through patience last. You're building systems of faith, discipline, and foresight that can't be undone by chaos. You know that real dominance is never about force, it's about formation. So when others panic at the delay, you stay grounded. You know that divine timing never misses. You've stopped chasing immediacy because you've seen how eternity always favors patience. You move slowly because you're aligning with something greater than speed, purpose. And when the structure you've built finally rises, when the sequence completes itself, when the trap you set across time finally closes, it's already too late for your opposition to react. Because while they were fighting in the moment, you were fighting through the ages. That's why your victories feel inevitable. Because they are, you didn't rush, you didn't flinch, you didn't fight what was in front of you, you built what was beyond it. You're never fighting just the present, you're building the future while everyone else is distracted by the now. My dear friends, Finally, this is the point where clarity replaces the craving for approval. Most people live trapped in what I call the prison of perception. They want to be understood so badly that they trade authenticity for acceptance. They bend truth to fit the room. But you know you've been delivered from that prison. You no longer live for applause. You live for alignment. You don't move to be liked. You move to be led. You've learned that being misunderstood isn't punishment, it's proof. Proof that you're operating on a frequency the crowd can't yet comprehend. When people can't define you, they'll distort you. When they can't predict you, they'll mislabel you. And when they can't follow your pace, they'll call you reckless. But you've learned not to take offense because misunderstanding is the tax of mastery. You've discovered that every visionary must walk through seasons of isolation. When you move against the grain, people think you've lost your mind. They see a move and call it madness because they can't see the plan beneath it. But you keep walking because you know every step you take is part of a design they'll only understand once it's complete. You're no longer trying to prove your value through explanation. You've learned that silence protects strategy. When others demand justification, you stay still, because explaining your vision to people without context doesn't bring clarity, it breeds confusion. You don't need everyone to understand. You just need time to reveal. You've realized that misunderstanding isn't a barrier, it's a buffer. It keeps the wrong people out of your process. It separates those who seek truth from those who crave control. When people misinterpret your motives, you don't chase their approval. You let them speak while you build, because while they're talking about what they think you're doing, you're already halfway to the finish line. This is what separates you from the crowd. You're not moved by opinion. You don't live off validation. You don't adjust your actions based on applause. You understand that purpose isn't a democracy. God didn't give your calling to a committee. You've learned that obedience often looks like rebellion to those who aren't walking in revelation. When they say you've changed, they're right. You've grown beyond the version of yourself they were comfortable controlling. They're reacting not to who you are, but to who you no longer need to be. That's why you don't shrink to fit their narrative. You'd rather be misjudged for being true than celebrated for being false. You've made peace with not being understood because you know your steps are guided by something higher. The crowd sees a move, you see a mission. They see confusion, you see construction. You've learned to trust the invisible timeline of transformation, the kind that only makes sense in hindsight. You've stopped explaining because you've learned that revelation can't be translated to everyone. Some things can only be shown through outcome. You don't argue anymore. You don't justify anymore. You just build and let the results testify. Because once the structure stands, even your critics will have to walk through the doors they mocked you for building, and that's your advantage, the gap between perception and reality. The space between what they think you're doing and what you're actually setting up, that distance protects your destiny. Because while they're busy misreading your silence, you're strategizing in peace. Their confusion becomes your camouflage. Their disbelief becomes your delay tactic. You've learned to weaponize misunderstanding. Your emotions no longer dictate your direction. You've learned that emotional intelligence isn't about reacting softer, it's about responding smarter. You don't let anger rush your timing or fear shrink your vision. You move with measured precision. You've mastered the pause between judgment and justification. You've learned how to remain steady when misread. Because here's the truth, people can only interpret you through the limits of their own experience. They can't see your depth if they've never been deep. They can't understand your silence if they're addicted to noise. They can't respect your process if they've never built anything real. So instead of trying to shrink your vision to fit their lens, you've learned to outgrow their perspective. That's why your confidence intimidates people. It's not arrogance, it's awareness. You don't need constant reassurance because you've already confirmed your assignment. You've realized that misunderstanding is not a reflection of failure. It's the sound of faith in motion. You're moving in obedience, not consensus. You're not waiting for agreement to act. You're trusting that revelation will eventually prove itself. You've also learned the art of restraint. You no longer rush to correct false impressions because you've seen how God uses misinterpretation to move you quietly into position. Sometimes He hides you in misunderstanding so you can build without interference. He lets people mislabel you so they won't monitor you. They underestimate you, and that becomes your cover. You're not offended when people misread your motives. You understand that discernment is rare and projection is common. People don't see you as you are, they see you as they are. And that's okay. You no longer take it personally because you know truth reveals itself in time. You've learned that patience is the proof of confidence. The power in not fearing misunderstanding is that it frees you from emotional manipulation. You no longer need to please people to maintain peace. You no longer explain to preserve image. You've stepped into a new kind of authority, the quiet authority of authenticity. You don't perform anymore. You just are. When others question your choices, you smile because you know they're judging from the outside of a story they were never meant to narrate. They're spectators, not authors. And authors don't ask readers for permission to write the next chapter. You keep writing knowing that one day the very people who doubted you will quote you. This is what maturity feels like moving forward. Even when misunderstood, staying kind, even when misjudged and remaining focused, even when misrepresented, you've stopped seeking comfort from clarity. You've learned that confusion around your calling is often a sign of its complexity. So you walk forward unbothered because misunderstanding no longer drains you. It defines you. It means you've stepped beyond explanation and into expression. You've outgrown the need to be seen correctly. You're more concerned with being true than being understood. You know that one day everything that seems strange now will make sense later. Your patience will prove your purpose. Your restraint will reveal your reason. And those who misread you will realize you were never trying to be right, you were trying to be real. So no, you don't fear being misunderstood. You wear it as armor. You let it shield your strategy, sharpen your discernment, and strengthen your discipline. Because misunderstanding doesn't break you, it builds you. It keeps you free from the weight of needing to explain a destiny that was never meant to be approved by man. And that's why your steps look so mysterious, because they're not made for mass interpretation, they're made for manifestation. As we come to the end of today's message, my dear friend, this is where it all comes together, the architecture of who you've become. The untouchable isn't someone who hides behind walls of pride or power. No, the untouchable one stands firm because their foundation is made of three unshakable pillars: principle, experience, and vision. You've built yourself on principle, those sacred laws that don't bend with emotion or pressure. While others change with applause, you remain constant. You don't chase comfort or validation. You choose conviction. You know that principle is the skeleton of strength. It keeps you upright when the world tries to twist you into something smaller. Every decision you make flows from what's right, not what's easy. That's what makes you trustworthy in chaos and immovable in temptation. Then comes experience, the fire that refined your faith. You didn't learn these lessons from comfort, you learned them from collision. You've been tested, stretched, bruised, and rebuilt. Every mistake became a mirror, every setback a syllabus. You've learned to read life like scripture, finding wisdom even in the wounds. Experience has taught you not to panic when the ground shakes because you've already survived worse. You move with calm precision because your memory holds the evidence of endurance. And then there's vision, the rare ability to see beyond the surface. You don't react to what's happening, you respond to what's forming. You can sense momentum before it manifests. You've trained your eyes to see the invisible architecture behind every situation. Where others see confusion, you see construction. You don't chase opportunity, You cultivate alignment. That's why your steps seem perfectly timed even when you're walking through the unknown. These three pillars, principle, experience, vision, create a fortress no enemy can breach. Together they make you untouchable. You don't just walk through the world, you shape it. You don't fight against events, you redirect them through invisible frameworks you've already built. You've become a master of quiet influence. Your power doesn't come from dominance, it comes from discipline. The discipline of perception, of silence, of action. You've developed what I call cognitive discipline. The ability to see patterns, systems, and details that others ignore. You read the room and the rhythm. You know the difference between noise and nuance. You can detect manipulation without reacting, deceit without defense. That's why you're impossible to fool. But observation alone isn't enough. You pair it with courage. You act when others hesitate. You make decisions without needing a crowd's approval. You know that leadership isn't about popularity, it's about purpose. Your courage doesn't roar, it stands still in storms. It's not loud, it's lasting. And in that stillness, you lead without announcing. You build without broadcasting. And then there's your art, the art of silence. You've turned quiet into a weapon. You know that mystery amplifies power. The less you explain, the more they wonder. The less you react, the more they reveal. You let your restraint do the talking. You let your composure unsettle those who rely on chaos to control you. Your silence has become your strongest sound. It commands attention without uttering a word. That's the portrait of the untouchable, not someone invincible, but someone anchored. You've built yourself on a structure that emotion can't erode and pressure can't penetrate. You don't need to prove yourself anymore. Your presence already speaks. You don't seek validation, you radiate certainty. You don't chase peace, you carry it. And yet you don't keep this transformation to yourself. Because wisdom that stays silent dies in isolation. You understand that insight only fulfills its purpose when it becomes illumination. So if this message stirred something inside you, if you felt the pull to grow deeper, to move wiser, to rise above noise, don't keep it to yourself. Take a moment to breathe it in, then act. Share this message with someone who needs it. Someone fighting to find their strength, their discipline, their clarity. Because transformation multiplies when it's shared. Your voice, your gesture, your click, it's more than support, it's stewardship. It helps awaken others to their own divine architecture. If this word resonated like it, comment below, let me know which truth reached you. And if it truly stirred your spirit, type 777 inches, the comments. It's not just a number, it's a declaration, a sign of divine completeness, of awakening, of purpose, unfolding in perfect time. Let it be your way of saying, I'm walking in alignment now. Subscribe if you haven't already. Stay connected to this space of wisdom, faith, and growth. Because together we're not just hearing messages, we're building momentum. Every share extends the reach of revelation. Every keeps the flame alive. Every comment reminds someone else they're not walking alone. And to those who've already been walking this journey, thank you. Your faith, your engagement, your quiet support make this mission possible. You're helping spread light in a world desperate for direction. You're helping others. Discover that stillness is strategy, that principle is power, and that vision is victory. As we close, I want to leave you with this truth. Being untouchable doesn't mean being unreachable. It means living from such inner order that no outer chaos can disturb your peace. It means knowing who you are so deeply that no misunderstanding can define you. It means standing so firmly in truth that the world's noise can only echo around you, never within you. So keep standing in that strength. Keep building from that foundation. Keep refining your vision and protecting your peace. Because the world doesn't need louder people, it needs clearer ones. People like you. People anchored in purpose, walking with wisdom, speaking with love, and leading in silence. You are the architect of your reality. the guardian of your principles and the steward of your destiny. That's the portrait of the untouchable, not distant but disciplined, not above but aligned. And as you go, may the peace of God surround you, the wisdom of experience guide you, and the fire of vision sustain you. Keep rising, keep building, keep becoming, because the untouchable one isn't chosen by luck, it's built by choice.